Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty complex analysis of our current global landscape. Basically, a world that feels like it's teetering on the edge of, well, multiple crises all at once.
Let's kick things off with this stark warning from Jamie Dimon, the guy who runs America's biggest bank. It's a line that really hints at these deep, hidden dangers in the financial system. You know, the idea that the problems we can actually see are probably just the tip of the iceberg. But here's the thing, this isn't just about some financial jitters. What the source material argues is that these financial warning signs are flashing bright red right in the middle of a massive global conflict. A conflict that it says already has a name, World War III. Okay, let's get into this. So the big question is, how did we get here? The analysis makes it really clear. This isn't about one single thing going wrong. Nope, it's about several historic pressures all converging, all hitting a breaking point at the exact same time. So, on one side, you've got a financial system that's showing some serious signs of distress. We're talking about the murky world of private credit. You know, that's all the high-stakes lending that happens outside the usual public markets, which makes it way harder to see who's really at risk. And on the other side, a geopolitical order that is just completely fractured into open warfare. These aren't two separate problems, they're two giant tangled-up emergencies happening at once. To really get our heads around how we got into this mess, we've got to rewind a bit. The chaos we're seeing now, it's actually rooted in this fundamental shift in power that's been in the works for centuries, taking apart the world order we all kind of took for granted. Just look at this timeline. The whole era of Western dominance, it kicks off around 1750 and hits its absolute peak right after World War II. But by the time we hit the new millennium, that world where one power basically called the shots was pretty much over. And now, we're living in the reality of a totally new, fully formed multipolar system. And this chart, wow, it really nails what the source calls the Great Delusion. The entire Western Bloc, even with all its key allies, only makes up about 12% of the world's population. The idea that this small slice could just keep running the show for the other 88% forever, well, looking back, that seems like a pretty huge miscalculation. And right into this fragile, shifting world, bam, a global stress test arrives. And it didn't just show us the cracks in the system, it basically shattered the whole thing. Now here's the crucial point. The pandemic didn't create these problems. It was more like pouring gasoline on a fire. It sped up every single underlying trend and exposed every single weakness, from our supply chains to our economies and our social safety nets. Okay, what's so fascinating about this slide is how it captures just a massive failure. I mean, the initial response to that first US case, it was perfect, totally by the book. But that head start was immediately thrown away by a huge federal blunder. They couldn't produce working test kits. This left the entire country completely blind for weeks, just as the virus was spreading like wildfire. And the economic fallout, it was brutally unequal. This chart shows what they call a K-shaped recovery. You see the top quarter of earners? Their employment levels barely budged. But the bottom quarter? Absolutely devastated. Their employment dropped by a mind-blowing 20%. And that inequality, it wasn't just local, it was global. Of the first 335 million vaccine doses that were given out, a staggering 76% of them went to just 10 wealthy countries. This whole vaccine nationalism thing basically left the most vulnerable parts of the world completely exposed, which of course just dragged out the crisis for everybody. And you know, while humanity was busy grappling with a pandemic, another crisis, a much, much bigger one, was just continuing to build in the background. A crisis that works on a geological timescale, with consequences that you just can't negotiate with. The data here is just, it's stark. There's no other word for it. By 2020, the CO2 in our atmosphere hit 412 parts per million. And just to put that into perspective, that's the highest it's been in at least 2 million years. It's pushed our planet's climate into totally uncharted territory. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Check out the dangerous feedback loop this slide shows. As glaciers melt, that incredible weight they put on the Earth's crust just vanishes. That shift can actually wake up old geological faults and unclog magma chambers, which leads to more earthquakes and more volcanic eruptions. So a warming planet literally becomes a more unstable planet. So the bottom line is this. We are living in a state of overshoot.
scientists have mapped out 9 critical systems that keep our planet stable for us, for human civilization. And we've already blown past the safe limits on 6 of them. And this isn't just about climate change either. We're talking massive biodiversity loss, using up way too much fresh water, and widespread chemical pollution.
So let's look at how all this starts to come together. These deep pressures, the geopolitical order falling apart, a super fragile economy, and a planet under stress, they're not just theories anymore. They are literally erupting into open conflict all over the globe. I mean, just look at this list. From Eastern Europe to the Middle East to the South China Sea, these are not isolated incidents. The source material lays them out as interconnected symptoms of a global system that's just under an immense, almost unbearable amount of strain. So where does all this leave us? The analysis suggests that if we really want to understand just how serious this moment is, we need to look for patterns in the past, specifically in the times leading up to the last 2 global wars. This table is frankly really unsettling. It puts the social, economic, and political trends from right before World War I and World War II side by side with today. And in every era, you see the same things: societies being destabilized by new tech, countries turning inward and becoming more nationalistic about their economies, and deep political divides exploding into actual violence. The parallels? They're pretty hard to ignore. And that really brings us to the central takeaway here. We're not looking at a perfect copy of 1914 or 1939, but the rhythm, the pattern, the rhyme, it's all starting to sound dangerously familiar.
Which leaves us with this final, really profound question. If our time really is rhyming with the most destructive periods in modern history, then we have to ask ourselves, what does the next verse look like? And is there still time to write a different one?